What? Get ready. Time for the podcast.
Welcome back to the CANDYcolored studio. I'm artist Katrina Berg, and this is episode 245. And against all odds, with the fabulous Lauren and Matt of the K-12 Art Chat Podcast. Welcome, Matt, Lauren.
It was an adventure to get us this far, but I'm glad we're able to be here. So
yeah, I feel like we're even better friends now, Katrina. Like we've made it.
Oh my
we persevered.
Gosh.
We bonded. We're bonded.
We're bonded now.
We're so bonded. We're so bonded, you guys. Holy cow! Oh gosh, you guys are amazing. Well, thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having us.
I'm glad we could do a little trade-off too.
So honored.
Yeah, this is so exciting. So Matt and Laura are like this creative, amazing duo, and I can't wait for you guys to hear all about their things. So let's just jump into it.
Where to start?
Tell us all the things. Tell us.
Wow, that's a lot.
Your family.
That's a lot. I'm gonna let you start.
Do we start in our formative childhood years?
Yes. Give us the whole creative journey. No.
Well, I guess we should probably just start at when we met. So,
okay.
Matt and I have been together for over 25 years. We met in college. Although we didn't like each other when we met, but that's a whole nother story.
Opposing views and a whole nother podcast.
Yes. That against all odds kind of thing again.
Yeah.
It's about don't judge a book by its cover kind of thing for both of us. And we were both in the art department in our little tiny Western State college at the time. Now it's Colorado.
Western
Colorado University. Sorry, they changed the name and it confuses us. So little, WSC, and I was an art/education major, and you were...
I was just in art, but we had, because the school was so small, we actually had circles, friend circles that overlapped.
And so we were both working, around the same time and different things. And I remember, I think one of our big first moments was when we each had our senior show in our little town of Gunnison, Colorado. And then we adventured together to California, where I started teaching, and Matt started in graphic design and print, and realized that maybe California wasn't going to be a good fit for us financially, as people who wanted to have a family, and as an educator, and he was just working a lot of early stage graphic design, which wasn't earning a lot of money at the time. And so we moved out to Texas, which is where we've been for over 22 years. It's where we've raised our family and grown our careers. And yeah.
That's so amazing. I love that you chose family and that you made that hard choice to leave California.
Yeah. I mean, I have family that lived at the time in different areas of California. And where we were living at the time, it was nice because I was probably an hour to, several hour drive away from that family. But I knew that what we wanted to do as a couple, we wanted to, was not going to really fulfill that being in California. So,
right.
And
that's amazing.
I actually grew up in Oklahoma, so it actually allowed us to be here through a really difficult time with my mother, through cancer treatments and hospice care. So, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe that there's everything is meant to happen for a reason, and I think that we were brought here to also be a part of that journey with my mom. So I think that had a lot to do with it, and so creatively, we were always making art and trying to figure out how everything fit together, I guess. When we got to Texas, Matt made a big change, actually.
I often jokingly say, though, I was repeatedly hit over the head as far as being told that I should go into education. I mean, I grew up, both my parents were educators. My mom was an elementary educator. My dad was a high school one, as well as a coach. And while we were in California, there were several times that while Laura was teaching, many of her older colleagues were like, man, Matt should really consider being an educator. And, I would like, whatever, no. And then when we moved out here, I just kind of dabbled in the idea of being a substitute teacher and absolutely just fell in love with it. And was like, this is where I want to be. And this is what I want to do. So,
well, and I think creatively you weren't being fulfilled with the graphic work that you were being given. And so I think that and having to deal with clients maybe wasn't.
Anytime you're dealing with clients is never easy. But no, it just was a direction that I found that especially over the 20 years that I've been teaching now, in varying areas, but it's a area where I enjoy even more giving kids, helping ignite that passion for those kids. So
absolutely. I love too that you come from a background of educators
mm-hmm.
because you saw it.
Oh yeah,
you know how it works, and then you found that it was like, okay,
I saw the reality of it, and I still overcame that and was like, yeah, all right, this is definitely something that I mean, and not just my parents, but also generational. Like my grandparents were in education, so, and that was also a common thing that Laura and I found to be a thread that helped us kind of go, hey, you and I should probably hang out more often.
Same. I mean, my grandmother was a teacher. She actually went to Western State to get her master's degree in education. It was an education school. And then I had aunts that were teachers on my dad's side. And then my mother was a teacher. And I was I came to the conclusion a little earlier than Matt did, because I actually went to school to be I wanted to be a painter. But there was something within the first 2 years of being there that I realized everything I was doing, I was teaching people things. And I thought, well, I'll just double major. And then I taught high school art and middle school art and really loved it. But then I also transitioned to teaching adults and moving into administration later. And now I teach adults all over the world, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, so I think it is in our DNA a little bit. Yeah.
That's so cool. And how about your kids?
We have 3. It's hard to believe that they're 18, 14, and 12 now. I would say
in a variety of directions. They're not all, they don't really have an aspiration to be an educator
or an artist, but they are all creative.
They're all very creative. Our 18-year-old is usually either singing or on stage, as well as being a firefighter or aspiring firefighter. He is in our city fire explorer program, which is kind of like learning the ropes of becoming a firefighter to apply for the academy later.
So when he graduates, he won't be going to he'll go to our community college and then move into the fire academy after he gets his EMT. So kind of a non-traditional path, but we're super proud of him because he's always wanting to help people. And even last night we were talking about how he probably will continue to do community theater just for fun. Our middle daughter is extremely visually talented. She is really good at putting colors together and style, and she was the first to really understand Procreate on the iPad.
In our family.
Yeah, for the 5 of us. Yeah, she was the one that really got into it. So you can find her drawing on her iPad frequently. She's in art classes in high school. But like her brother, she also wants to help and do things. So she's thinking about being a nurse. But again, she's 14, so who knows what
that may change.
Yeah, she vacillates between wanting to go to SCAD and nursing school. So those are like on the spectrum of things. So we'll see what happens with her.
And then our youngest dabbled in the veterinarian arts for a little while. She wanted to be a veterinarian. And all things animals and farms. And then she started to cross into the competitive world of swimming. and has not put it on the side, because she absolutely still loves her animals and loves to take care of our 3 dogs. So we have 3 kids and 3 dogs, so it is a circus at all times.
All times.
But she is absolutely, I mean, couldn't be more
laser
focused on swimming, and her aspirations is looking up to Katie Ledecky. So
but she's also really she's in art as well.
Yep.
And as much as she wants to deny that maybe she's not the artist, like right now she's working her, she is competitive. So right now, like if you give her like a poster contest or a visual like a district art contest, she's all about it. So that had like right now we're in a holiday break and she's working on a contest as we speak. So their motivations are all different.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love that you're all pursuing your passions.
Well, that was a really big thing for us as parents. I think we were really both very lucky to have parents that were open to letting us be who we were, and letting us find our own strengths and passions. And, one of the things I love about Matt's mom in particular is that she was like, Matt comes from a very athletic family, but she was always like, yes, but you also need the arts. And so she made sure that all the boys had
she made a deal with my dad and was like, if these boys, it was 3 boys, so I'm the youngest, but it was, if they are going to do sports, then they need to do some kind of arts to kind of balance that out, whether it's band, whether it's theater, whether it's singing, whether it's art, whatever. Then they had to do, if they were going to do one, they had to do the other. So
yeah. So I feel like we've taken that as kind of a thought pattern too, is like, just really trying to give the kids as many opportunities without overdoing it for ourselves too. There's a balance there as a parent.
Right.
But giving them opportunities that really allow them to open up and find their own personalities and who they are as young people. So
you guys are so awesome. That's so cool. So we talked a little about your work and also the kids, but what creatively, like I know Laura, you've been doing some local, like some new stuff, like tell us a little bit about what you're working on personally.
So both of us do a lot of visual journaling, but I have been doing, for a while I was doing like, I love mixed media. I'm more, I would say, non-objective than anything else. And I love color, which it's one of the things I love about your work is the color. Because I am all about, like, I think even as a young artist, people would say, oh, you're such a colorist. Like, and then I would have people say that my work reminds them of Fauvism and things like that. And it's really just about bold color. And I had been doing a lot of acrylic, non-objective paintings, some large, some small. And then because I lost my mom, and I've really done a lot of reflecting about connecting all the pieces of your life and trying to be a whole person. I think a lot of times we try to have these different buckets, and I prefer to like have everything overlap. So that it, trying to balance it. I don't think you can balance it when it's in different places. I feel like it has to overlap. And so part of that for me is visually in my art showing how those pieces overlap. And part of how I do that is I think about family, and having lost my mom, my mother was an economist, which sounds so weird because she taught AP economics and government, and here I am, this artist. And the only thing she ever did creatively in front of me was embroider. And so I learned to stitch from her. And so I started incorporating stitches into my paintings to kind of honor the women in my family, and in particular my mom and my nana. And then I, was making those pieces, and then I realized that maybe I needed to work somewhat smaller just for time and trying to make that balance work in my life. So now I've moved to these small watercolors that also incorporate some stitching. And then there's a local artist that I know that she and her sister just opened a really cute little artist collective in the town just north of us in Allen called Chloe May. And so I have some pieces on consignment there. And even though I am an administrator and I do all these other things, I'm always making art in the background. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that is so cool. I'm writing down Chloe May
Yeah.
so we can like link to it.
Yeah, Chloe May is amazing. It is the cutest little they have just blown up too. They've only been open like 2 or 3 months and they do workshops. So if I can find time in my schedule, they've asked me to do a couple workshops. I'm sure they would love to have Matt do a visual journaling workshop. But yeah, they do workshops. It's really about being mindful and blending mindfulness and art making and beauty into your life. That's like their whole concept. And I really jive with their concept. And so I'm like, plus I love the women that opened it. So there's that too.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And Matt, tell us a little bit about yours, about your journaling.
Well, I mean, I was kind of late to that. I mean, back to, my inspiration of being my dad. My dad was very open to his garage as far as tools, and he instilled in us in a very young age that you can use whatever's out there, just make sure to put it back in its right place. But he, so that I've always been interested in things that are 3D, and I want to, Legos have always been a key component for me, and I was glad that I got to pass that down to my son, especially, and our daughters. They all, any chance there's Legos, they will definitely tinker with them. But I was always a pretty average student. I wasn't, wasn't like way over the top, and I wasn't, down way below struggling. I dealt with a lot of processing issues, but not really realizing what those were, especially as a kid, or how to even work with them. But then as I was, I as I got older, I then started to realize, what, there are students that are in elementary school that are really struggling with that, because that's actually where I first started teaching, was elementary. And I started to see some of myself in them. And then that's kind of when I really changed my approach to teaching to be more of that inclusive learning styles, because I wanted those kids that were like, well, I'm not so good at this, or I'm not so good at that. I wanted them to see, you are, it's just in a different way. And then as my children started coming with me as I was teaching elementary school, I started to see it in our son. And when he was being diagnosed with ADHD, I realized that I had it myself, and realized that it was genetic. And and then that's when I really kind of took more of that approach of making and writing lessons and creating things that were more for those all of those different learning styles, rather than just trying to focus on one or the other.
I think that's when you started journaling more too.
And that is, and I ended up going to Seattle for our National Art Conference one year, and Laura's like, hey, you need to go check out these guys at this workshop. And they are the Journal Fodder Junkies. And so I sat there in a workshop, and I really started to realize, I thought journals were just for writing your deepest, darkest emotions and secrets, and realizing that it could be used in a very practical way. And that's when I started kind of leaning more into, I've always been a fan of mixed media, where you're just grabbing everything and just kind of putting it together, and then using my journal in that way too. And so that's kind of where a lot of, processing starts to happen. And then that's also where a lot of, lesson plan brainstorming started to come from as well.
Yeah, I mean, Matt's creativity, a lot of it flows into his lesson plans, but lately you've been doing a lot of collage that has come from your journals, but now you're pulling it out into these collage pieces, I'm really excited to see where you take those. Yeah. And jelly plates. This guy loves jelly plates. loves jelly plates.
I've done a few workshops of doing jelly plates, and just I love to show them to people that have never seen them before, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my gosh, these are amazing!" and just see their excitement, and they're like, "I can't wait to use these in my classroom." So
Oh my gosh.
it's always fun.
That is so powerful. You guys are amazing. Seriously. I told you guys they were a dynamic duo. Well, I mean, we have all this amazing things that you're working on in your family and work, and obviously personally. Then how did the podcast kind of
That is
come into being?
so actually about almost 12 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I moved from being a campus administrator to being the district administrator for the school district that Matt and I were in together. I already
had this job.
Yeah,
so I was already a teacher in the district.
I was
clarifying that before it gets any further.
I was a supervisor of you, but not your boss.
No.
Yes. So I became the visual arts coordinator for all the art teachers. We have about 100 art teachers in the school district that we're in. And I was looking for ways to bring them together. They seemed like they were not really a community. And there were like pockets of community there, but I was like, man. And then when they would get together, which was only like twice a year, they would just like be so excited and talk. And I thought, is there a way to bring them together? And I started talking to a couple of our younger art teachers that were on Twitter a lot. And this was when Twitter was a cool place to be. And we started doing this thing called K-12 Art Chat, and we would chat with art teachers on Thursday nights about whatever topic there was kind of a protocol for it, and we would just visit with other art teachers. And then we started noticing that art teachers from all over the country and then all over the world, we would have like people from Singapore and Australia and different places, Africa, like join in this K-12 Art Chat on Twitter. And then we started having people host it. So like we were always there, but we weren't necessarily we would bring a guest.
We were the moderators, and then there was a host who would bring their topics and their questions to the group for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And some people would then message us later and be like, "Hey, I was really interested in that person. I want to hear more from them." And then we heard that more and more. And then somebody said, "Hey, would you guys ever consider doing a podcast?" And we're looking at each other going, "Oh, what?
Yeah,
who wants to hear us do that?"
And this was all just like a organic, a way to bring art teachers together, because a lot of times art teachers are isolated because maybe there's one on a campus or one in a school district, right? And so it was really just this organic way of like having like-minded teachers come together to discuss. And then we thought, oh, we'll bring creatives into it and bring artists into it, and like just kind of grew from there. And then it turned into this like, okay, well, we'll start interviewing these folks. And so we started, it's funny how the progression works. So like there was a time where it was just like YouTube visits. Like I remember talking to Dan Sinat on YouTube, and we were like, oh my gosh, he's an amazing author. Like, and then we're like, okay, we should turn this into a real podcast. And then we had to figure out how to do that. And then we connected with Susan Riley from the Arts Integration Institute, and she sponsored us for a while and really got the podcast rolling. And then, things happen, and they were going a different direction, and our lives were in a weird place with just trying to raise little kids. And so we just started doing it on our own for a while.
That was interesting. I learned more about iMovie and how to edit things than I ever really imagined I would. But
and then about 4 years ago, we thought, okay, our kids are getting bigger. We have less time. We need help, right? We need a sponsor. We need somebody to do the editing. We need just some support on, promotion, all those things. So we reached out to Davis Publications, which is the oldest art education publication in probably the world, definitely in the United States. They're based in Massachusetts. And we said, hey, we have this podcast. It's people like it. I don't know. Do you have any interest in like partnering with us? And so they said yes right away.
Right away.
And
that
we were
blew
like,
us
wow.
away too.
And so they partner with us, and we house a lot of the content on their website, and it's free to anyone that wants to check it out. So on their website is where like all the like links, like if somebody, a guest like you is on there, like your link to your podcast is there, and your link to your art is there, and all of those things. But then they also posted on all the normal places you can listen to a podcast too. So it's been a real win-win for us. And then they have a lot of resources and people that we wouldn't normally get to visit with, because they're, writing books for art teachers.
Gosh.
Yeah. So
some of the people we've come in contact with, or that they have helped put us in contact with, has just been even more altering of how we teach.
Yeah.
And so
it's been fabulous.
Yeah, just listening to one of your latest ones with the guy that was the sneaker designer, and now he has his own university.
Pencil.
Pencil.
I'm going to link to that episode because that was like so mind blowing. And I heard lots of good ones. You guys have a lot of good ones. But that one, I was like anyone who's a creative or have creatives in their life, they need to listen to that episode. That was so powerful.
It's a really powerful, I think there's so much to it because his story, like his personal journey is like, I just got chills thinking about that discussion.
I did too. I cried.
Yeah.
I got chills. I cried. Like, it was so good.
Yeah. Well,
so good.
We try.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing. So I guess, like, when did you start doing the community compared to, you know what I'm saying? It sounds like you've been doing it for like almost 15 years.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, we did it really just started on Twitter, and that we did that for 5 or 6 years on its own. And then we added the podcast into it. And it, like I said, it's been in different, it's even had different titles. So when we got to Davis, we're like, you know what? Everybody just knows it as K-12 Art Chat from Twitter. So let's just call it that, because literally we're having an art chat. Like, that's what we're doing. We're talking about art. We're chatting. And I think the community part is just intrinsic in who we are. Like, we believe, like I've always said, even as a leader, like there's a couple things like in my roles in leadership that I really believe, like, number one, the smartest person in the room is the room. Like, you have to collaborate, you have to talk to each other, you have to like value everyone's voice, and you have to, more than anything, listen. Like, listening is really important. So like, I really believe that. So that goes back to my feelings about community. And then the other piece that I really believe is, like, it's our job to grow leaders in the field. Like, it is, if you're a leader, you are responsible. Like, that is part of your responsibility, is to help guide others and help them have a voice and be a leader. And so that all speaks to community and giving like these resources. I think that, especially when Matt was teaching at the elementary and I wasn't in art, I was an assistant principal, I recognized how isolated he was. Because he would come home and be like, blah, 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 blah. Like, I would be dealing with like kids on drugs and like some really, like, I have some really hard things that I dealt with when I was in that role. And I'd be worried about kids, just all kinds of things. And he would come home and need to talk through lesson plans and ideas and all of these things. And I'd be like,
I love you, but
I'm not in that frame of mind right now. And I realized he had no one else to talk to, right? Like, he was the only art teacher at that school. The community of art teachers in our area wasn't super strong at that point. So he felt isolated. And that's like, as soon as I took on the role as being the district administrator for the art teachers, I was like, this will not be any longer. They will be a community like it. And honestly, when we went through COVID, all of my teachers said that we work with, all of our teachers were like, thank goodness we are community, because we would not have survived this without each other.
That we were already. And then because of COVID, we were able to just kind of pick up, almost made it easier in a way to be able to sit there and plan out and, creatively come out. I mean, we ended up as a middle school, I had shifted up to secondary to middle school, and the middle school group, I mean, we ended up totally revamping our entire middle school curriculum because of some of the great things that we came up with during COVID. And we're like, this can still apply in person.
Yeah.
So,
and I would say like that community that we developed on Twitter has been one of the biggest blessings that we've ever had. Like, when we go to a national conference or a big state conference, or, these are not just teachers we know, these are friends of ours. Like, I mean,
we literally know them personally. Like, we've exchanged phone numbers with them, and we always are texting them or checking in with them, not just on social media, but just picking up the phone and actually calling them. And those are always the first people we end up seeing and end up giving hugs to in person. So when we see them at conference.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think community is just, and I would actually attribute that back to our parents, because I think that as teachers, they showed us the importance of community. And, I think too, like, my father was a police officer, my mother was a teacher. Like, you take care of the people around you, right? Like, that's what we were taught. And I hope that that's what we're teaching our kids, as well, as like, I think that you've got to roll up your sleeves and understand that we're all in different places in our lives. And, today you might need me, but tomorrow I might need you. And I think that that's really important. And
I mean, even as my dad as a coach, really instilled, he was a wrestling coach, and really instilled the idea of leaning on your teammates to help push you through.
Yeah.
So.
And I think education is a hard, difficult place pre-COVID, but post-COVID, and, not to,
and will be.
I just think it will be. I think that there's, unless you've done it or you understand it, or, it's just, that's why you need people that are also doing it to talk to and work through issues with and brainstorm with. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with the way that you were able to just sail through COVID, because you already had this in place, right? And I feel like the theme and maybe the title of this episode is something like living a full and abundant life through service and collaboration.
Yep.
And
that's
tapping
it.
into your ancestors and family. Like, that is so beautiful.
Yeah. It is a full life.
It's full of chaos. It's full of,
but like
anxiety.
But even in parenting, like, we have, we've made friends with other swim parents. If you need your kid needs a ride, and we might need to call you for a ride. And like, there's just like, I think that's, I just can't imagine doing it without others. Like, I do believe, and we don't have family here in Texas. So like, for us, it's really important that we've, built these relationships and friendships with people that a lot of them do come from teaching, but not all. And I think that without them, like, I look at Owen, our oldest, he's a senior, and he's grown up with Sienna, one of our best friends. Their kiddo was born 2 weeks after Owen. And we met them when I was pregnant with Owen, and she was pregnant with Sienna. And like looking through this, 18 years of these children growing up together, and they're going to graduate this year. And it's just been such a privilege and honor to have people like that in our lives, that, that if I needed anything or they needed anything, we can call on each other. And they're not family, but they are family, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And it's interesting because in this time of great technology and connectivity, it doesn't mean that those connections are going to be deep. And so it is important to have those connections that can be deep, that are real and in person. And that's what Sienna and, did you say Owen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they have.
Yeah.
And your families have that. So cool.
Yeah. But I will say, like, some of those connections we made on Twitter are some of our, like, also, like, if they lived here, they would be those people, which is interesting. Like, I have a friend in Nick.
Oh, yeah.
Nick Hahn, who's up in Minnesota. Like,
Oh,
She
I love
literally,
Nikon.
oh, she's one of our really good friends. Yeah. So Nick
I mean,
and her kids, like one spring break, just drove, like her and her husband,
They-
all of them came down here and spent spring break with us and like stayed in our house. And like, they're like,
That's so
you
cool.
have a pool. And we're like, yes, it's Texas.
I mean, or
But
even,
they were, I was like, it's too cold to get in, but they're Minnesotans, so
or
they
even
got
like-
in.
Yeah, right. I mean,
So
even
that, yeah,
Don Massey
that's what
in
I-
San Diego.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And that's the thing is, I think it's too easy to use that technology to just be surface. And
Yeah.
what you guys are showing is how to go deep and have those connections, even if they're further away,
mhm.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
come swim in our pool.
But yeah, come swim in our pool. So
Spend a week in our house.
yeah, I think that
Yeah.
too, part of that is like there's I think there's a like a transparency with us.
Oh,
I don't
no,
know.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're just very open and honest and
We're gonna be straightforward. I mean, even I know this in teaching middle schoolers. You know, I'm like, I tell them from the very beginning, I'm like, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not gonna be mean, but I'm gonna be honest. And sometimes that may come across as being mean, but sometimes it's just I'm also gonna be open with you. And if something's going on with me, and you notice I'm a little off, I'm gonna tell you. So.
and I think our kids would say the same.
Oh yeah, our kids say the same
Yeah,
thing.
ours is the same.
Stop talking, Mom. You're being too much.
Too open.
Too much.
Too open.
Yeah, I'm the
So.
same way. I'm like, we talk about stuff with our kids that our parents never talk
No.
to.
We talk
I
about
have
that all
friends
the
that don't talk to
Mhm.
their kids that way.
time. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's in this world of the internet, if we don't have the conversation first, then they're gonna find it somewhere somehow.
Yeah.
And it's
And it
not
might-
gonna be right.
Yeah, or it's not gonna be put in a way that helps their brains that are
Understand it.
developing.
Yeah.
You know, even
Yeah.
18-year-old, their brains don't stop developing for a while. You know, we got another few years to go.
Well, and you know their journey because you have nourished them for up to
Mhm.
18 years already,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Oh, such a good topic. What a gift. What a gift that you have given and that you've received from the podcast.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And obviously we can't just say podcast, but it's all connected.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
is. It is. It literally
That's
is.
so cool. So one of the questions that I got a few years ago, and I kind of just started asking everyone that I interviewed, just because everyone has a different experience and perspectives. But let's talk about creatives finishing high school, or even adults that are totally wanting to make a new change and be an artist. What are some of your advice? Like, should they go into debt? Should they intern? Should they take classes? I mean, what do you guys think?
Number one, everyone is different and everybody's journey is different. So I think that there in this world that we currently live in, there's so many variety of options. Like, you know, I a few years back, there was a special education teacher that started making dolls. And she was very creative and she wanted to become an art teacher. And so we sat down and had a whole conversation about like, what's the process for this? How do we make this happen? And then like she did become an art teacher and started teaching elementary art, and that was great, but she still got her side business of, you know, making dolls, and she had to go to workshops and different things. And I've seen, you know, lots of people in different careers decide to make a career change. Um, and there's so many pathways for that. And you know, and I see kids all the time, having been a high school teacher and administrator, you know, thinking that the only pathway is to go to Micah or go to, you know, RISD or Ringling or, you know, any of those schools, and that is a pathway. But to your point about debt, a lot of those schools are expensive and it's hard to get scholarships and different things. And then I look at our little Collin College, where my friend Jen Seibert, who opened Chloe May, is this amazing painting instructor right over there. And I'm like, you could just go to the community college right here, where you could work with this amazing painting instructor and start that pathway, and then maybe decide to do some international workshops. Or, you know, there's just, I think you really have to look at each kid as an individual. I think there are some humans that need like that very structured, like go to Micah, do the 4 years, follow the plan, like, and I think that's great. But I also like to tell people, like in my role as director of learning for NAEA, for the National Art Education Association, everyone I work with has degrees. Not everyone, but most of them have degrees from really fancy schools, right? Um, in my mind, they're fancy because I didn't have the funds as a kid getting out of high school to go to a fancy art school. That wasn't an option for me. There was no college fund for me. I had to work my way through school. So I wanted to go out of state. My grandmother had gone to Western State. I ended up getting there and loving the campus, and they had a small little art department, and I thought, this is really nice, and I can make this work. I can make this happen, right? And it has no, like, if you say to Western State to anyone, they're going to be like, what, where? But I had a great small program where I was with those instructors, and I had like 8 or 9 students in a class, and it was just really wonderful. And like last time we were there, I was like, oh, my mural's still on the wall. Like, like just things like that. And I think that you just have to really look at the individual, look at the options, look at the, there's just so many things. And with YouTube and things like that, and being able to learn things or go to local workshops, there's everything and anything, but it really depends on the person.
I think you also have to think about your purpose, your why. What is it that is pushing you to go do that next thing? Like what, or change directions altogether? What's the final outcome that you see? Because you may get into it and be like, oh, this is not what I was expecting at all, or I think I maybe made a mistake, and so by then you've already put a whole bunch of time and a whole bunch of energy. Something that, Laura and I, going back to somebody in high school, is to make sure that you're finishing high school. I mean, I know that sounds really bad, and it sounds like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can handle it, but that's definitely, at least finishing that will open up
So many
options,
doors.
at that point. So, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking about too, like, I don't know, the listeners live everywhere, right? But like, if you finish high school and you're not sure what you want to do, you can inexpensively take a few classes at the community college, right? Like, instead of going into a 4-year school and like having to spend so much money and go in debt, like that's an option. If you're interested in the fine arts and creativity, there's also, like, in our area we have the Dallas oh gosh, what's it called, Creative Center Dallas. It's
Yeah.
Anyways, they have tons of workshops and classes taught by fine artists in Dallas, and they're not terribly expensive, right? And so if you wanted to learn how to weld and do sculpture, you could take classes there, and it gives you a taste of, like, just what Matt said. If you're not sure and you don't know what your purpose or your outcome is, and let's be honest, I mean, at 18 I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, and no way, when I started teaching, did I think when I started teaching I would be where I am today. Like, there's a big jump there, and Matt didn't think he was ever going to be a teacher. Like, that wasn't even on the radar. So I think that there's, even to Matt's point about, like, he just decided he would start subbing to see if he even liked it. Is that what he wanted? Is that what, I think that you need to find some way to try it out a little bit before you buy the whole program. Yeah.
And I think, now with the joys of social media, I mean, the ways that we've connected with people, and famous people. I mean, we connected with people like Peter Reynolds, Dan Satnat, just to name a few of them. But we just reached out to them and started having conversations with them. So even that idea, just asking those questions and reaching out to people, and if there's somebody that's maybe in that industry or in that area that you want to pursue further, talk to them about it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys dropped so many pearls of wisdom. So good. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you. That was brilliant. Okay, so one of the other big questions that I like to ask people, and you've kind of weaved this a little bit when you talked about the buckets, but truly there are so many things that we as creatives want to do, but there's only 24 hours in the day.
Oh yeah.
So what are some of those hard choices that you've made, and what are the things that you've had to maybe give up or set aside for a time to pursue your creative passions?
Well, I think you said it right there, set aside for a time. There was about 7 years, a period of 7 years where I did not make art. And I look back and I'm like, how did that ever happen? And it was when, I was finishing a master's degree and then becoming an assistant principal and moving into administration and having 3 children. It all happened.
That would put
Like
things
it
on pause.
all happened at once. And I look back on that time and I feel like I learned a lot from the mistakes I made during that time. I don't regret any of it, by the way. I just feel like I learned a lot from it, but I did not feel whole when I wasn't making art. And so I think I really decided when I came back to art that I was just going to make art for myself. And I've really done that. And I've kind of set aside the idea of selling big things and trying to be out there and, doing a lot with my art other than making it for myself at this time, because I know what my purpose and my passion is, which is really to inspire and support art educators. Like that's really what I think I'm meant to do. And so my hope is that when I retire, I'll, be able to do more painting and getting into that world, back into those things, and maybe being able to show and things like that. But for now, I really, like I said, I do try to make the buckets overlap. Like it's little things like during swim practice, our daughter swims for 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. It's not always close to us. So I literally like throw a bag together, and sometimes in like a hurry because I'm running late, of mixed media supplies, and I'll throw my journal because I also visual journal. I'll throw that in there, or I'll throw a small watercolor that I'm working on in there, and I will make art in the car while she's in swim practice. There's nobody to distract me. I can listen to my audiobook or my music, and I can make art. And I think that's a lot of the reason I started working a lot smaller, is that so I can, and even sometimes when practice is close, I do that because I'm like, this is 2 hours that I can take for me and just sit in the car and wait on her, because we're not allowed to go into practice anyways. So, why not? And I think that that's a huge part of like just finding those moments of time. Like, could I be doing something else during that 2 hours? Yes, I could run errands. I could return emails. I could sit on my phone and take care of calendars with the kids. I mean, there's plenty of things I could do. But I think saying, you know what, I've been given this 2 hours. I'm going to take it for my own creative self and soul, really, my creative soul, because without it, I don't feel whole. And it's things like that, trying to find those moments of time where you can fit it in. I think Matt also taught me early on to make art with the kids.
Yeah.
When they were little, we used to do that a lot.
I mean, when I was working with my journals, I work big. I'm a big person. I'm 6'4". And I love to just spread out. I put everything out on the floor. I have my big giant journal.
Biggest sketchbook you can imagine. I'm like, what is this thing? It's like 18 inches. No, well, I think it's 11 by 18.
Something. But it's a rather big, large journal.
Yeah.
But it was big enough that when I would open it up on the floor and I would sit there, then my kids, when they were younger, probably 3 to 5, 3 to 7-ish, would, ask me if they could work in it. And I'm like, sure, why not? And it's good to just have that time with them. And you don't even have to be talking, but just having that time of just kind of together and just hanging out, being creative.
They will, and they do like this is fun because he does like to lay on the floor and draw. It's not comfortable for me, but it's interesting to watch how our kids do the same thing. Like especially our middle daughter, she will, if he does that, she immediately, like, or if either of us, like the other night we had a movie night, but I think we were watching Elf, which we've seen a billion times. And I had my journal out and I was working on something and he had his journal out, and immediately our 14-year-old went and got her iPad and was on Procreate. And I think the
creative vibe in the room.
Yeah, it was just really interesting. Yeah. So we do have these little moments. We also host art nights, like where we have our arty friends, and when we moved into our current home, it has a very square dining room, and I wanted the biggest round table you could find.
Yes.
And so I did. I found a huge round table, and you can see at least 8, sometimes 10 around this round table. Yeah, I also had to buy a giant Lazy Susan because otherwise you can't make it work.
So instead of party supplies, we have art supplies, and we're
around
just like
Lazy
spinning
Susan.
the Lazy Susan around. Okay, here it comes.
Literally, we have like, you need a paintbrush? Let me spin the Lazy Susan to you. So like, we like have these mats we put out, and everybody sits around the big round table, and we just hang out, and we have our beverage of choice, and we sit and we visit and we work in whatever it is that each of us is working on. Like,
or somebody brings in a new idea and they're like, hey, check this out. I mean, I had a friend show me how to make an enamel pin, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. So
That's amazing. And how many people fit around your big round table?
With the art stuff, I say we can get 7 or 8.
7 or 8.
It depends on what we're creating that day,
Yeah.
So,
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys, this has been such a treat. Like, thank you. Thank you for just putting so much goodness into the world in everything that you do. I'm just really honored to have been connected with you and to have this conversation and to have persevered together through the technology. Yeah, so thank you so much. You guys are amazing. So what are the best places that people can follow you and your work?
Well, I mean, we are on Instagram. Our business group of Creativity DEPT. On actually most of the social medias.
Yeah. Our LLC is called the Creativity Department, and it's really about like just bringing joy and creativity to people. And instead of being the art department, we wanted to be the creativity department. So that's our LLC, and that's really where you can find us on Instagram. We're about to completely get rid of our Twitter and move over to Blue Sky. So in the new year, we're moving to Blue Sky, which we're really excited about. And then we have Facebook as well. And then you can find us on davisart.com for anything there. And then we have our website, but it's kind of not been updated in a long time.
It's a little dusty. We got to blow the dust off.
Yeah. Maybe for 2025, we'll refresh that.
I put that in my to-do list.
Yeah.
That's so good.
But we love hearing from people because we love to hear who they want to hear from, who they want to meet, who they want to learn from. Like, and that's really what it is for us.
Yeah, we've actually had you're the second person to comment on the pencil podcast episode. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So we'd love to hear from people, connect with people. It's really I'm really excited about Blue Sky and starting that back up and having more conversations with people
Cool.
in the new year.
We're excited to be on this side of the podcast rather than the other side of the podcast.
So,
right? It is a different space, isn't it? Well, especially when you can't control the technology.
Right.
Well,
and I hope that our listeners loved our interview with you, because we've had such joy getting to know you and having you on our podcast. And your art is just so beautiful. I just love it so much.
Thank you.
Just, you really have a beautiful soul. And
same.
I just appreciate getting to know you. So thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you guys. You're amazing. I just want to remind our listeners that you can listen to the K-12 Art Chat on all the podcast places.
All of them.
So whatever your app of choice is, go find them. And thank you.
Thank you.
Laura, Matt.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You guys are wonderful. And thank you, listener, for being with us today. And we are sending so much love from the creativity department and the CANDYcolored studio. Much love.
My
So cute. I love it.